Chapter 1501. Jing Lang was probably going to lose his life. Young Master Li, who was standing at the side, was also in a daze. He did not expect that this was just a small bet, but now, it even involved a person's life. Young Master Zhu, I have merely obtained the reward of this gamble. Could it be that young Master Zhu has forgotten that you, young Master Zhu, agreed to allow me to take something from you? When Jing Lang heard Zhu Zhen's words, the expression on his face did not change at all, and he replied very calmly. When Zhu Zhen heard Jing Lang's words, he immediately trembled with anger. He pointed at Jing Lang with a trembling finger, but he was unable to say anything for a long time. His chest heaved up and down, and his eyes were filled with hatred as he looked at Jing Lang. "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to tear you into pieces," Zhu Zhen said fiercely. "Oh? Who is so arrogant that he actually dares to tear my big brother into pieces?" Just as Zhu Zhen finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out in the silent crowd. The clear female voice was filled with disdain, and it also seemed to be extremely arrogant. It immediately attracted everyone's attention, and a path slowly opened up in the crowd. Everyone's eyes were looking in the direction of the main road. On the road, a group of figures slowly emerged. The two people standing at the front were dressed in black. Their clothes were luxurious, and at a glance, one could tell that the material was of high quality. However, what caught everyone's attention was not the clothes on these people. Instead, it was the handsome man and woman standing at the front. The woman's golden-green eyes flashed with a strange light as they looked in Jing Lang's direction. Imperial concubine with different pupils? Who in Yangzhou City did not know the appearance of Jing Yu and Xiao Qin? At a glance, they recognized Jing Yu. When they turned to look at the person beside Jing Yu, it was obviously Xiao Qin, the current 9th Empress. When they saw the arrival of Jing Yu and Xiao Qin, the crowd was already surprised enough. However, when they saw the group of people behind Jing Yu, they suddenly lost their voices. In Yangzhou City, there were many people in the government, unlike in the Imperial City. Almost all the people in Yangzhou City were in charge of Jianghu. When these people saw Jing Yu and Xiao Qin, they immediately became speechless when they saw the people behind Jing Yu and Xiao Qin. The sect leader of the Dark Een sect, the tower master of Sento Tower, the palace master of Constellation Palace. These were almost the top forces in the three countries. Now, they were all following behind Jing Yu and Xiao Qin. Such a shocking scene made everyone lose their voices. What was more frightening was that there was a group of people behind them. Behind these people, there was another force. There were even some people who often sailed, and they immediately recognized the Dragon Prince Xiao Bai, who dominated the sea. Moreover, there were countless pirate forces behind Xiao Bai. This group of people just walked casually. However, they were accompanied by such a luxurious lineup. This simply made people speechless. No matter which one of these people came out, they would be able to shock everyone present. But now, all of them had come out at the same time. This lineup brought shock to the crowd, making them completely speechless. "Big brother, you came back in such a hurry. It turns out that you came to find Miss Feng Ju." Jing Yu and Xiao Qin walked slowly into the circle. Everyone unconsciously stepped back a few steps, swallowing slightly as they looked at Jing Yu and Xiao Qin. Chapter 1502. When Jing Lang saw Jing Yu's arrival, he was slightly stunned. Then he smiled faintly and said, "Didn't I tell you not to come? Why did you still come?" "Humph." Jing Yu coldly snorted and said, "If I didn't come, wouldn't I be watching Big Brother get bullied?" Jing Yu said with a cold smile. Then she turned to look at Zhu Zhen, who was lying on the ground with a dazed expression. "Trash like you dare to insult this imperial concubine's big brother?" Jing Yu looked at Zhu Zhen. Her golden-green eyes turned cold inch by inch. She looked at Zhu Zhen with a cold smile and said, "Big brother is too benevolent. For this kind of person, isn't it better to leave him alive?" Jing Yu slowly narrowed her eyes and said, "Blind thing, how dare you peek at my sister-in-law? You deserve to die." When Jing Lang heard Jing Yu's words, he helplessly called out. He lowered his eyes and said, "If I killed him, wouldn't I be letting him off too easily?" "HM?" When Jingyu heard Jing Lang's words, her eyebrows curved and she smiled faintly. She said, "That's true, but—" Jingyu looked at Zhu Zhen's frightened and pale face and smiled faintly. She said, "Look at him. It's probably because his family taught him too well. Bring some people to greet the people of the Zhu residence." Jingyu turned to look at Xing Er and said, "This Zhu residence makes this imperial concubine uncomfortable." When Xing Er heard Jingyu's words, he calmly lowered his head and bowed. "Yes, madam. Don't leave a single one alive." When second interrogation officer turned to leave, Xiao Chen Waiweo tilted her head and uttered these 4 words. Instantly, everyone present felt a gust of cold wind blow past them. Their bodies trembled violently, and their faces were filled with fear. Jingyu had mentioned it earlier. Just hearing about the Zhu estate made her uncomfortable. Since Jingyu said that she was not feeling well, then there was no need to keep the Zhu estate. Xiao Chen's idea was very simple. When Xing Er heard his master's words, he silently swallowed his saliva and lowered his head in agreement. His eyes were filled with calmness, as if he did not sense anything wrong. Even in her dreams, Zhu Zhen would never have imagined that this person wearing such shabby clothes would actually be the older brother of the imperial concubine of different pupils. What the fuck is this? On the other side, young Master Li was so agitated by this series of events that he was at a loss for words. "Someone come, pull out this person's tongue for me and throw it far away. It's really an eyesore lying here." After Jingyu said this coldly, she completely ignored Zhu Zhen, who was screaming in panic because of Jingyu's words. Amidst the chaotic screams, Zhu Zhen completely lost her voice. At first, this was just to attract Feng Zhu's attention. However, in the blink of an eye, the famous Zhu estate in Yangzhou City was completely removed because of Zhu Zhen. The person who did all of this and said all of this was as simple as crushing an ant. This person was the imperial concubine of different pupils. Only she could have this kind of ability. "Big brother, why didn't you change your clothes before coming here?" Jingyu turned her head and saw Jing Lang's clothes. She immediately opened her eyes wide in displeasure and said, "No wonder people look down on you." Chapter 1503. I forgot. When Jing Lang heard Jingyu's words, he lowered his head in embarrassment and said, "I was in a hurry and didn't notice." Jingyu smiled and turned to look at Feng Zhu, who was standing beside Jing Lang, and said, "Could it be that big brother missed Miss Feng Zhu so much that he left us behind and couldn't wait to come over?" The 9th Imperial Concubine. When Feng Zhu heard Jingyu's words, his face immediately turned red and he hurriedly called out. Jingyu looked at Feng Zhu's appearance and suddenly laughed. The people in the circle didn't care at all. In just a few words, a family was destroyed and a person was crippled. Young Master Li, who was standing at the side, shook his body violently. Seeing Jingyu's actions, young Master Li suddenly felt that Jingyu was incomparably kind-hearted compared to Jingyu. "You don't stand for too long. It's not good for the child." Jing Lang looked at Jingyu and said helplessly, "It's okay." Jingyu heard this and raised her hands slightly to cover her lower abdomen. The originally flat abdomen was now slightly bulging. Only then did Feng Zhu notice the change in Jingyu. No wonder Feng Zhu felt that Jingyu was different a while ago. After hearing Jing Lang's words, Feng Zhu's eyes widened in surprise. The 9th Imperial Concubine is pregnant? Feng Zhu's eyes widened in surprise as he looked at Jingyu and asked. "Yes." Jingyu smiled and nodded. She said, "It's because of this child that we came back a little late. Big brother was extremely anxious waiting. He didn't even change his clothes before he came to find Miss Feng Zhu. Quickly bring you in." Jing Lang hurriedly said, afraid that Jingyu would say something else. Feng Zhu was thin-skinned and the blush on her face wouldn't dissipate. Yes. Quickly go in." Feng Zhu nodded his head and replied. Jingyu and Xiao Chen once again returned to the residence in the attic. However, this time, there were many maids and nannies in the attic. She took care of Jingyu's daily needs. She told Jingyu what she needed to pay attention to. Xiao Chen was probably still traumatized by the previous incident. Therefore, when Jingyu was pregnant, he practically surrounded the entire residence. Seeing Xiao Chen's nervous expression, Jing Yu's eyes were filled with joy. On the third day after Jing Yu's return, Xiao Chen found a midwife to check Jing Yu's body. From the midwife's mouth, he finally confirmed that this was Jing Yu's first pregnancy and she did not have a miscarriage. Master, madam. The midwife was quite old. She was famous in Yangzhou City for being a good midwife. How is it? Xiao Chen slightly frowned and asked, "What's the situation?" Master, madam's body is very good. This is her first child and she didn't have a miscarriage before. The midwife said seriously, "A woman who has had a miscarriage wouldn't be like this." Furthermore, this old woman checked madam's lower body and there weren't any signs of a miscarriage. Master, please forgive me for offending madam. The midwife slightly bowed and said to Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen immediately frowned when he heard this. He looked at Jing Yu, who was wearing her clothes behind the screen, and his frown deepened. Since she wasn't pregnant, then what was the matter with the child that was discovered before? Chapter 1504. Jing Yu, who was behind the screen, heard the words of the midwife. She frowned and her eyes were full of seriousness. Could it be that what Qinggu said was true? That she was pregnant with a fake fetus? Oh, rest well in the room. I'll go look for Qinggu. Xiao Chen stepped into the room and covered Jing Yu with a blanket. Then, he turned to look for Qinggu and told him what the midwife said. "Ninth brother, I already know about this." When Qinggu heard Xiao Chen's words, he nodded slowly and said, "I only suspected it before. Now, I'm almost certain that ninth sister-in-law was pregnant with a fake fetus. However, there is a drawback to this fake fetus. It can only make the pregnant woman show signs of pregnancy for 3 months. In other words, after 3 months, the fetus will disappear and the miscarriage will just be an illusion. Actually, it wasn't a miscarriage at all. It was just a normal reaction of a woman's body." Qinggu looked at Xiao Chen and said slowly, "If I remember correctly, ninth sister-in-law was found to be pregnant for less than 3 months, right? After that, she had a miscarriage. I remember that when I checked ninth sister-in-law's pulse, I felt that her pulse was very weak. At that time, I thought that the fetus in her womb was unstable. I didn't expect that the pulse was fake. Ninth brother, I still need to ask Master about this matter before I know what happened. I already knew a thing or two about the fake fetus when I was in Miracle Medical Valley. However, I didn't look into it because I wasn't familiar with the field of medicine." As Qinggu spoke, he turned to look at Xiao Chen and said, "In my opinion, this must be Qin Bai's doing. Ninth sister-in-law was pregnant because she was very close to Qin Bai. If it was caused by drugs, it must be Qin Bai's trick." Damn it. Xiao Chen's face turned cold. Losing this child was a huge blow to Jing Yu. If Xiao Chen knew that Qin Bai was behind this, he wouldn't have killed Qin Bai so easily. He would have let him live a life worse than death. Xiao Chen pursed his thin lips and slowly turned to look at Qinggu. "Investigate this matter carefully. This fake fetus won't affect the baby in Jing Yu's womb, right?" Xiao Chen frowned and asked Qinggu. "No." Qinggu shook his head and said, "Ninth sister-in-law's body is very good. The fetus in ninth sister-in-law's womb is very stable. She just needs to take care of the fetus. When I have time, I will often check her pulse." "That's good." Xiao Chen slowly nodded when he heard Qing Ji's words. When Xiao Chen came out of Qing Ji's room, the sun was about to set. Xiao Chen looked at the sun in the distance, but the coldness in his eyes didn't fade at all. "Master." Xing Yi saw Xiao Chen come out and walked toward Xiao Chen. He lowered his head slightly and called out. Xiao Chen responded indifferently and turned to walk down the attic. He asked, "How is the thing this king asked you to do?" "Begin by, everything has been done according to Master's instructions." Xing Yi lowered his head slightly and said, "I cut off one of his hands. The ship that let the sea out also leaked. Now those people from the Holy Family are probably buried in the sea." Chapter 1505. Xiao Chen responded faintly, as if there was no emotion in his voice as he strode forward. Xing Yi followed behind Xiao Chen and lowered his head slightly. Jing Yu was soft-hearted. Since Jing Yu did not want to kill those people, Xiao Chen would help her. When Jing Yu decided to release the members of the Holy Family, Xiao Chen made another decision. When he released these people, he was actually forcing them to commit suicide. When Xiao Chen did this, he did not feel anything. However, Xing Yi understood Xiao Chen's meaning. Master loved Madame very much. Otherwise, why would he stop Jing Yu when she was about to kill the members of the Holy Family on the altar? Master did not want to let those people go. He had never been soft-hearted to those who had hurt Madame. Master stopped Jing Yu because he did not want her to see these people die. In other words, he did not want Jing Yu to do it herself. Xiao Chen knew clearly that if Jing Yu killed them now, she would blame herself for a long time. After all, although those people were from the Holy Family, they had never hurt Jing Yu. Xiao Chen did not want Jing Yu to feel uncomfortable. That was why he stopped Jing Yu when she gave the order. However, Xiao Chen did not let these people go. Xing Yi followed behind Xiao Chen and stood in front of the attic. He narrowed his eyes as he watched Xiao Chen walk up the attic. This was their master. He would not say anything. He would just do it quietly. Xiao Chen knew clearly that Jing Yu's soft-heartedness could lead to danger in the future. Xiao Chen could not let this happen again. Therefore, when Jing Yu said that she would exile the members of the Holy Family, Jing Yu gave them a chance to live. What Xiao Chen did was to cut off their lives. That was to cut off all their chances of survival and force them to commit suicide or kill each other. Floating on the ocean, the boat had already been tampered with by Interrogation Officer 1. The boat was not big, but it was not small either. It was already at its limit to accommodate so many people. In a situation where there was no food or water, the only thing they could do was to row with all their might, hoping to reach the mainland. At first, everyone felt lucky that they were still alive. But as the days passed, how could they endure being starved all the time? Moreover, they were drifting on the endless sea. They could not find anything at all. One person began to become impatient. Two people began to become impatient. They argued and quarreled. Everyone became uneasy. Just because of a small matter, it triggered the first battle. After that, it was completely out of control. People who were in the same boat as them were killing each other at this time. Without food, the only thing they could do to survive was to use human flesh to attract fish and eat them. After such days continued for a while, people died one after another. The original group was torn apart. Everyone was on guard. This was survival. This was the human heart. In the past 2 months, they had been wandering aimlessly on the surface of the sea. Those who deserved to die had all died. They had been mercilessly killed by their own clansmen. In the end, they had even started to eat human flesh in order to survive. At first, they thought that they could survive. However, later, they found that there was a problem with the ship. It began to leak. Chapter 1506. All kinds of situations emerged one after another. It was the most terrible 3 months of Qin Bai's life. However, from a high and mighty high priest of the Holy Family, he became like this. The only thing worth mentioning was that he survived. He was Qin Bai. He had killed everyone. With the help of a small wooden board, he was submerged in the sea until he almost lost his life. In the end, he survived. He floated on the surface of the sea for 5 months. He was washed to a deserted island, where he woke up. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen didn't know whether Qin Bai was dead or alive. Because Xiao Chen and Jing Yu were now thinking about the baby in their belly. Jing Yu was pregnant, so she didn't go anywhere. She could only stay in Yangzhou City, in order to let the baby grow up safely. Jing Yu didn't have any opinions about it. After all, Jing Yu liked it very much in Yangzhou City, so Jing Yu didn't have any opinions about it. In the blink of an eye, a few months had passed. Jing Yu's belly was getting bigger day by day. Originally, Jing Yu could still walk around, but now with a big belly, it was really inconvenient for her to go anywhere. She also slept carefully at night. Her temper had become extremely irritable. She could make Jing Yu explode with just a few simple words. Her mood swings were also very big. This was probably because of her pregnancy. Jing Yu was always very sensitive to everything, and she often lost her temper with Xiao Chen. However, Xiao Chen didn't have any dissatisfaction about it. No matter what Jing Yu said, Xiao Chen would listen to her. No matter how angry Jing Yu was, he would persuade her. Every time Jing Yu was angry, she would look at Xiao Chen and couldn't be angry at all. This man was probably the only one who could spoil her to the bone. I don't care. I just want to see the snow. Winter had just passed, and spring had just arrived. However, Jing Yu seemed to have thought of something and insisted that she wanted to see the snow fluttering in the air. This made Xiao Chen very anxious. It's spring now. Xiao Chen pursed his lips slightly. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Jing Yu looking at him fiercely. Xiao Chen's words suddenly changed in his mouth. Okay, I'll go find it for you. Xiao Chen's Adam's apple moved silently as he said seriously. If I don't see the snow tomorrow, don't come to see me. Jing Yu glared at Xiao Chen angrily and went into the house with her big belly. Xiao Chen watched Jing Yu go in and frowned. Spring, how could there be snow? These few months were probably the happiest and most painful days of Xiao Chen's life. This was because Jing Yu would always make ridiculous requests, such as this one. Xiao Chen walked out of the house with a conflicted heart and walked down the stairs. Xing Er saw Xiao Chen come out and was slightly stunned. Then he looked at Xiao Chen's expression and knew that Madam must have given his master some difficult problem again. Master? Xing Er raised his voice slightly and called out. Xing Er, do you know where there is snow? Xiao Chen turned to look at Xing Er and asked. Snow? Is it snowing? Second Xing was slightly taken aback. He raised his head to look at the weather that was gradually warming up. He looked at Xiao Chen with a conflicted expression and said, Master, it's February now. How can it possibly snow? Chapter 1507. Yeah, I want to know too. Xiao Chen looked up at the warm sunlight and frowned. Madam said she wants to see snow falling. How can he make it snow? Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. At Xiao Chen's words, Second Xing's lips twitched and he shut his mouth silently. Madam had become extremely difficult to please since she got pregnant. Only his master would dote on her so much that he wanted her to go find Xue Xue with just one sentence. Shangguan Linglan sat in the room he shared with Jing Yu and looked at Jing Yu, who was sitting opposite him, eating leisurely. 5 months had passed and Jing Yu's belly had gotten bigger. She was 8 months pregnant and would give birth in 2 months. Jing Yu's originally thin figure had also become a lot more plump at this moment. She looked even more alluring. At this moment, she was lying lazily on the soft couch, eating the freshest food. She looked very comfortable. Jing Yu, I heard you told Xiao Chen to go find snow. Shangguan Linglan looked at Jing Yu and said with a smile, It's February now. Where would there be snow? Humph. When Jing Yu heard Shangguan Linglan's words, she threw the food in her hand on the table and said, This is his punishment. Who told him to forget me so easily? Jing Yu said unhappily, Although I know he's being controlled, I've been dreaming of that scene recently. That damn man, how dare he forget me? Even if he's being controlled, he can't forget me. If we don't teach him a lesson now, what if something like this happens again? Jing Yu said with a frown. That doesn't make sense. Shangguan Linglan looked at Jing Yu and said with a smile, How can Xiao Chen decide to be controlled by himself? Back then, you were controlled by the sound attack aristocratic family, but you still stabbed me with your sword. What? When Jing Yu heard Shangguan Linglan's words, her eyes widened in shock. She turned to Shangguan Linglan and said, Linglan, what did you say? I was controlled by the sound attack and stabbed you. Shangguan Linglan waved his hand nonchalantly and said, It happened a long time ago. You weren't aware that you were being controlled. I understand. That stab wasn't deep. It's fine. How can this be? Let me see. When Jing Yu heard Shangguan Linglan's words, her eyes filled with panic. She wanted to see Shangguan Linglan's wound no matter what. Shangguan Linglan couldn't persuade Jing Yu, so he went into the room and took off his clothes for her to see. This scar has been there for a long time. Qinggu gave me a cream to remove the scar. Although I can still see some of it, I don't remember it. The shallow wound on Shangguan Linglan's chest was very obvious against his snow-white skin. Jing Yu stared at Shangguan Linglan's wound. She could almost imagine what had happened back then. When her sword stabbed Shangguan Linglan's body, How shocked must she have been? But she could say that she understood so easily. If she had accidentally killed Shangguan Linglan back then, Jing Yu wouldn't be able to forgive herself for the rest of her life. Chapter 1508. Linglan. Jing Yu clutched tightly onto Shangguan Linglan's clothes. When she lifted her head, her golden-green eyes were already filled with tears. She called out to Shangguan Linglan with a suppressed tone. Shangguan Linglan looked at Jing Yu in such a state and instantly panicked. I'm sorry. Jing Yu said in a choked voice. Why are you crying? I'm fine, aren't I? Shangguan Linglan quickly helped Jing Yu wipe away her tears. In Shangguan Linglan's memory, Jing Yu wasn't someone who liked to cry. As expected, a pregnant woman's mood swings were too big. If I had known, I wouldn't have told you. Shangguan Linglan looked at the weeping Jing Yu and said helplessly, if Xiao Chen saw this, he would think that I bullied you. If he dares to say anything bad about you, I will break his legs. Jing Yu said fiercely when she heard Shangguan Linglan's words. Ha! Shangguan Linglan laughed out loud when he heard this. He looked at Jing Yu and said, he is your husband. If his legs are broken, you will have to take care of him. It's not worth it. Jing Yu also felt the same way when she heard Shangguan Linglan's words. She thought about it seriously and suddenly laughed out loud. Hurry up and tell me, how did I hurt you? Jing Yu watched as Shangguan Linglan put on his clothes and said, I have to get some good medicine from Qinggu. I have to get rid of the scars on your body. It's fine. Shangguan Linglan replied calmly. No. I said I want it. Jing Yu completely ignored Shangguan Linglan and acted as if she was in charge. Shangguan Linglan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was afraid that he would trigger Jing Yu's emotions if he continued to speak, so he kept quiet. The two of them chatted in the room and the atmosphere gradually eased. Just as the two of them were talking, Shangguan Linglan suddenly saw a few white things floating down from outside. He was slightly stunned. When he turned his head to look, he was instantly stunned. In the sky, snow-white things were floating down. Jing Yu also turned her head to look. At first, it was just a small piece. However, under the gaze of Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglan, more and more white things floated down. This is... Jing Yu looked at the thing floating down and her eyes were filled with shock as she said, it's snowing? How is that possible? Shangguan Linglan jumped up when he heard this. He walked out of the room to take a look. However, when he saw the scenery outside, he was completely speechless. Snow was falling. Jing Yu was also standing in the attic beside Shangguan Linglan. She saw the scenery outside with her own eyes. She lowered her head slightly and saw a person standing downstairs. He was holding an oil paper umbrella and dressed in black. He was standing under the white snow. This is... The white snow floated down in a mischievous manner. Shangguan Linglan reached out to catch it. However, what he touched was not snow, but light fluff. Shangguan Linglan was stunned for a long time. Then he couldn't help but laugh. It was really interesting that Xiao Chen could use such a method to get along with him. Now, did you get what you wanted? Shangguan Linglan turned his head slightly to look at Jing Yu. Jing Yu's eyes were fixed on Xiao Chen. She never thought that Xiao Chen would really do his best to satisfy Jing Yu because of her rude request. Jing Yu obviously knew that the so-called white snow was fake. Chapter 1509. However, Xiao Chen's sincerity was undeniable. Xiao Chen stood in front of the attic, holding an oil paper umbrella. He pursed his lips as he looked at Jing Yu and said, "The snow you wanted to see, I found it for you. Are you happy now?" "It's beautiful." Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen's cautious eyes and smiled. Her gentle expression made Xiao Chen's nervous heart relax. Xiao Chen was afraid that Jing Yu would say that it wasn't real snow and that it didn't count. Xiao Chen would have nowhere to cry. Looking at Jing Yu's faint smile, Xiao Chen immediately felt relieved. Shangguan Linglan looked at this scene and shook her head with a sigh. She slowly opened her mouth and said, "This is really a competition of playing with the warlords." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Jing Yu glared at Shangguan Linglan and went back into the room. The snow outside stopped after a while. Jing Yu and Shanghai Linglan looked away and continued to chat on the soft couch. Jing Yu was very satisfied with Xiao Chen's performance over the past few days and her mood improved. Xiao Chen let out a sigh of relief. Today's weather was as good as usual. However, Jing Yu just woke up. When she walked around the room, she heard a knock on the door. Xiao Chen sat by the desk and put down the book in his hand. He frowned slightly. "Come in." Xiao Chen responded. In the blink of an eye, he saw the door open and Interrogation Officer 1 striding in. Jing Yu turned to look and saw Interrogation Officer 1's serious expression. She immediately felt uneasy. "What's wrong?" Jing Yu looked at Xing Yi and asked with a frown. "Master, madam, there's news from the Northern Pastoral." Xing Yi looked at Jing Yu and Xiao Chen. He bowed slightly and said, "We found the Empress's whereabouts, but what?" When Jing Yu heard that it was related to Lu Miaoqiu, her heart trembled violently. Her eyes were filled with anxiety as she asked. Xing Yi pursed his lips and bowed again to Xiao Chen and Jing Yu. He said, "Something happened to the Empress. The Empress has been in the Northern Pastoral since she left the Tokyo. She hid in Madam's restaurant. However, a month ago, the Empress suddenly went out of the Northern Pastoral Imperial City and hasn't returned since. This subordinate has sent people to investigate, but there was no trace of the Empress. Now the Empress is missing." Interrogation Officer 1 slowly spat out these words. The blood drained from Jing Yu's face, and her eyes were filled with intense shock. "What's going on? Wasn't everything fine before?" Jing Yu looked at Xing Yi in shock and asked. She stood up a little too quickly. Don't be anxious." Xiao Chen quickly stood up and walked to Jing Yu's side. He raised his hand to support Jing Yu. He was afraid that Jing Yu's pregnancy would be affected. He frowned slightly and turned to Xing Yi. "Tell me what happened." "Yes." Xing Yi nodded his head in response, and told him everything that he knew in full detail. Although Interrogation Officer 1 was very puzzled as to why Jing Yu asked them to suppress the Empress' whereabouts and not tell the Emperor, there must be a reason for Madam to do so. However, given the current situation, "Master, Madam, do we need to tell the Emperor about this?" Xing Yi looked at Jing Yu and asked. Chapter 1510. No. Jing Yu shook her head slowly and said, "Things aren't that simple, Xiao Chen. I want to go to the Northern Pastoral." Jing Yu suddenly turned to look at Xiao Chen and said. Xiao Chen rejected Jing Yu's request without hesitation. He looked at Jing Yu's stomach and said, "You'll be in labor in about a month's time. You can't bear the bumps." "Miaoqiu." Jing Yu frowned anxiously when she heard Jing Yu's words. "I'll go." Just as Jing Yu was about to speak, she heard a sound coming from the door. When she turned to look, she saw Shangguan Linglan striding in. He said with a serious expression, "Xing Er already told me that I'll go to the Northern Pastoral." "Linglan." Jing Yu looked at Shangguan Linglan and frowned slightly. Helian Theo said a long time ago that he wanted to go to the Northern Pastoral. This is a good opportunity. I'll go with Helian Theo. You stay in Yangzhou and take care of the baby. After you give birth, come to the Northern Pastoral to look for me. Shangguan Linglan looked at Jing Yu and said, "Don't worry, I'll definitely find Miaoqiu safely." But Jing Yu raised her hand and rubbed her stomach. Now wasn't the time to show off. She wasn't alone now. There were two of them and she couldn't act recklessly. "Linglan, you have to be careful." Jing Yu pursed her lips tightly and looked at Shangguan Linglan as she said, "I'm afraid that Miaoqiu has been taken away by someone who's targeting me. You have to be careful. Remember, don't act recklessly." "I understand." When Shangguan Linglan heard Jing Yu's words, he nodded slowly. Jing Yu repeatedly reminded him of some things that he should pay attention to. Then, she told him about the business that Shangguan Linglan had in the Northern Pastoral and asked him to keep in touch with Shanghai Linglan. Only then did she release Shangguan Linglan. Jing Yu naturally sent Xing Er to protect Shangguan Linglan. Xiao Chen naturally didn't have any objections. After Xiao Chen and Helian Theo said these words, they let everyone leave. Early the next morning, Jing Yu, with a big belly, sent Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er out of Yangzhou City. There was still some distance between Yangzhou City and the Northern Pastoral. He didn't know if Shangguan Linglan could make it in time. Don't worry. Even after Shangguan Linglan and the others had left, Jingyu still stood in the same spot with a frown. She looked in the direction that Shangguan Linglan had left and lowered her head helplessly. She said, "Will Linglan be all right?" "She won't." Xiao Chen held Jingyu's hand tightly and said, "Isn't Xing Er by her side protecting her? Besides, there's also Helian Theo. That's the Northern Pastoral's territory. Helian Theo won't let anything happen to Shangguan Linglan. He will definitely be able to find the Empress." "I hope so." When Jingyu heard Xiao Chen's words, the worry in her heart was relieved. However, she still felt uneasy. She lowered her head slightly and didn't say anything else. She allowed Xiao Chen to hold her in his arms as they walked into the city. Shangguan Linglan left. Fortunately, she was able to receive news on time along the way. This made Jingyu's uneasy heart relax a little. She lowered her head slightly with a calm expression in her eyes. Jingyu was still a little nervous when she was about to give birth. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Jingyu's stomach didn't move at all. Initially, the child would move from time to time. Sometimes, she could even feel the child turning around in Jingyu's stomach. Chapter 15:11. However, there was still no movement even though she was about to give birth. There's still no movement? Xiao Chen found it strange. He asked this question every day. There's still no movement. Jingyu blinked and replied calmly. She continued to eat and drink every day. She didn't look like a woman who was about to give birth at all. Not only was Xiao Chen confused, Qinggu was also confused. He didn't know what was going on with Jingyu. Xiao Chen just stared at Jingyu's belly and talked to her every day. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chen's silly look and laughed happily. She looked at the sky outside the window and was slightly dazed. Time really passed too quickly. Jingyu was a little caught off guard. In the blink of an eye, she was about to give birth. Jingyu originally thought that she was about to give birth and was a little nervous. After all, this was her first time and she was really a little afraid. However, after waiting for a long time, there was no movement at all. Immediately, Jingyu was at a loss. Could it be that the baby in her stomach was comfortable inside and wasn't coming out? The more Jingyu thought about it, the more frightened she became. She actually jumped up in the room and muttered, "Brat, come out. Come out." When Qinggu stepped into the room, he saw this strange scene. When he saw Jingyu hugging her big belly and jumping up and down, he was stunned and stood at the door for a while. After hearing Jingyu's muttering, 3 black lines appeared on his forehead. "Ninth sister-in-law, what are you doing?" Qinggu frowned and waited for Jingyu to speak. "Qinggu, it's you." Jingyu turned her head slightly and raised her hand to wipe the thin layer of sweat on her forehead. She said, "The baby is in my belly and won't come out. If I jump, it might fall out by itself." Qinggu was stunned when he heard Jingyu's words. He looked at Jingyu's belly and swallowed slightly. He thought for a while and said seriously, "Ninth sister-in-law, you're right. It might really crawl out by itself. Continue to jump. I won't disturb you. I'll leave first." Qinggu said to Jingyu with a smile and then silently turned to leave. Jingyu heard Qingji's words. She blinked slightly and watched Qinggu leave. "Will it really crawl out by itself?" Jingyu muttered curiously. She lowered her head and looked at her belly. When she thought about it, she suddenly felt stupid. When she was in the modern world, she watched so many TV shows. Wasn't it very painful to give birth? Why didn't she feel anything at all? Jingyu was very depressed. She looked at her belly and was tired from jumping. She sat on the soft couch again and raised her hand to pour herself a glass of water. She wiped the sweat on her face and reached out to the book beside her to read for a while. However, when Jingyu reached out her hand, her belly moved slightly. Jingyu's body suddenly froze. She carefully felt the movement in her belly. However, when Jingyu washed her body, she couldn't feel anything at all. It was as if the movement just now was an illusion of Jingyu. Jingyu lowered her head slightly and looked at her belly. She sighed deeply and reached out to the book again. However, when Jingyu reached out her hand again, the movement in her belly became louder. Chapter 15:12. Ah! The sharp pain caused Jingyu to clench her fists even tighter. She held the book in her hand, and there was a hint of fear in her eyes. She lowered her head slightly and looked at her stomach. But it hurts. Jingyu didn't dare to move. After the pain subsided slightly, an even more intense pain came. The pain made Jingyu cry out again. The book in her hand fell to the ground. When Xiaochen walked out into the corridor, he heard a cry of pain from inside the room. It was Jingyu's voice. Although it wasn't very loud, Xiaochen heard it immediately. When he heard the first cry, Xiaochen thought that he had heard wrongly. However, after a short pause, Xiaochen's expression changed drastically when he heard another cry of pain. He immediately slammed open the tightly shut door. Xiaochen rushed in hurriedly. The moment he rushed in, he saw Jingyu lying on the soft bed, not daring to move. Xiaochen. Jingyu looked at Xiaochen with a faint mist in her eyes. She said, "Did I pee?" Xiaochen's gaze moved down slightly and landed on the hem of Jingyu's skirt. He could clearly see the wet marks on Jingyu's skirt. At first glance, it really did look like she had peed. "It hurts." Jingyu bit her lips and looked at Xiaochen. She said, "My stomach, someone come. Someone come. Someone come quickly." Xiaochen looked at Jingyu's pained expression and panicked. He roared like a madman. Xing Yi was the first to appear. Like Xiaochen, he rushed into the room. When he rushed in, he saw Jingyu lying in Xiaochen's arms with a thin layer of sweat on her face. Xiaochen's face was full of panic as he looked at Jingyu. When he saw this scene, Xing Yi only had one thought in his mind. Something big had happened. Lord Qingge. Madam is about to give birth. In this quiet loft, it was as if a chain reaction had occurred. Everyone began to panic. The sound of running footsteps and heart-wrenching screams could be heard from within the room. Ah! The door to the room was tightly shut. Everyone could only anxiously wait in the corridor. There were 2 nannies standing guard at the door. Every now and then, a basin of blood could be seen being carried out. Xiaochen almost rushed in a few times, but he was held back by Xing. "Master, don't worry. Madam will be fine." Xing Yi had already repeated this sentence countless times. "Ah! It hurts, I don't want to give birth." Jingyu's screams pierced Xiaochen's ears. The heart-wrenching screams made Xiaochen's legs go weak and he almost fell to the ground. He looked into the room with a pale face. "Help! Xiaochen, you bastard! I'm going to beat you to death." "It hurts." Jingyu felt like her stomach was about to explode from the pain. She suddenly felt like she wanted to take a dump, but she couldn't. "It hurts, hurry up and get this broken thing out of my stomach." Jingyu's forehead was covered in sweat as she glared at those people and cursed. Chapter 15:13. Madam, try harder. When the midwife heard Jingyu's words, she was speechless. She had delivered so many madams, but she had never seen someone like Jingyu. Exasperated, she said to Jingyu, "He's almost out. He's almost out." "He's not out yet." Jingyu was on the verge of breaking down when she heard the midwife's words. "If I had known that giving birth would be so painful, I wouldn't have given birth." Ugh. Jingyu wailed like a ghost and howled like a wolf. Everyone outside heard her and tried to stifle their laughter. Seeing that Jingyu still had the energy to scold people, they guessed that she was fine. Xiaochen was both anxious and amused. In the beginning, Jingyu was still scolding with vigor. However, towards the end, Jingyu's voice became softer. It was obvious that she was tired of scolding. The childbirth lasted until the sky turned dark. Finally, under everyone's waiting, the child was born. Wah wah! A loud cry broke the silence of the night. Jingyu's last bit of energy was sapped from her body. Her eyes stung as she turned to look. The midwife was smiling as she handed the child to Jingyu. "Congratulations, madam." "Congratulations, madam, it's a boy," the midwife said with a smile. "Why is it so ugly?" Jingyu looked at the child that was handed to her. She looked at the wrinkled doll and its tiny appearance and spat out these words. When the group of maidservants who were helping with the delivery heard Jing Yu's first sentence after seeing the child, their expressions immediately changed. They looked at Jing Yu with a strange expression. There was even a thought in their minds. Was this really her biological child? If they hadn't seen Jing Yu give birth to the child with their own eyes, they wouldn't have dared to believe that this was something a biological mother would say. Jing Yu looked at the little person whose eyes were tightly shut. Her heart was filled with curiosity. This was a child that was born after 10 months of pregnancy. How miraculous! Jing Yu looked at the child and smiled faintly. Bring him to Xiaoqin. He must be worried sick. Yes. The midwife responded and carried the steamed bun out. Jing Yu smiled slightly and allowed the maidservants to clean her up. They then tidied up the blanket on her bed. Only then did Jing Yu fall asleep comfortably. After the smell in the room dissipated and Jing Yu was carried to another room, Xiaoqin hurried in. When he saw Jing Yu lying on the bed with the child beside her, Xiaoqin's eyes filled with a faint smile. You. Xiaoqin walked to Jing Yu's side and bent down slightly to kiss Jing Yu's forehead. He looked gently at Jing Yu and said, "It's been hard on you. You know that it's been hard on me?" Jing Yu glared fiercely at Xiaoqin and said, "You have to treat me better in the future, okay? In order to give birth to this child, I walked one round around the gates of hell. You almost couldn't see me anymore. Don't talk nonsense." When Xiaoqin heard Jing Yu's words, his face paled slightly. He glared at Jing Yu and said in a fluster, "You know how to feel heartache?" Jing Yu looked at Xiaoqin and smiled faintly. "I'm very tired. I want to sleep for a while." "Okay, I'll stay here with you." Xiaoqin replied and sat down beside Jing Yu's bed. Jing Yu glanced at Xiaoqin and lowered her eyes. She looked at the child sleeping soundly in her bedding and smiled slightly. She bent down to kiss the child and slowly closed her eyes. Chapter 15-14. Xiaoqin sat in his chair and looked at Jing Yu and the child. He couldn't stop smiling as he looked at the small child. His eyes were filled with tenderness and love. Tudo was born successfully and both mother and child were safe. Xiaoqin named the child Zn. He said that he wanted the child to thank Jing Yu for carrying him for 10 months. Xiaoqin wanted to thank Xiaoqin for giving birth to him. "Xiaoqin, the name you came up with is too unpleasant. Tudo sounds so nice." Jing Yu was still lying in bed after giving birth. When she heard the name Xiaoqin came up with, she immediately complained. Xiaoqin heard Jing Yu's words and raised his eyebrows calmly. "That's the name of my child's father," Xiaoqin said calmly. "You're good. I gave birth to this child. I have the final say." Jing Yu said angrily as she looked at Xiaoqin. "Without me, could you have given birth to this child?" Xiaoqin's words immediately shut Jing Yu up. She glared at Xiaoqin with an ugly expression. After holding it in for a long time, she finally scolded, "Shameless." Xiaoqin chuckled and nodded at Jing Yu. Just like that, Tudo's name was born beautifully. Shangguan Linglan, who was far away in northern Pastoral, also received the news from Jing Yu. Jing Yu gave birth. "It's a boy." Shangguan Linglan jumped up the moment he received the news. His eyes were filled with surprise. Xing Er looked at Shangguan Linglan's happy expression and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. "Master named the little master Zn, Xiaozin," Xing Er said calmly. "Xiaozin? That's a nice name." Shangguan Linglan heard it and nodded his head. His eyes were filled with satisfaction. "The little master's nickname is Tudo." Xing Er hesitated for a moment before saying it again. "Tudo?" Shangguan Linglan was stunned for half a minute. Then he jumped up as if he had seen a ghost. He looked at Xing Er's serious expression and said, "Needless to say, this name was definitely given by Jing Yu, right?" Xing Er nodded his head slowly. "I'm really impressed." Shangguan Linglan saw Xing Er nod his head and suddenly laughed out loud. Only Jing Yu had the ability to come up with such a special name. Shangguan Linglan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Jing Yu gave birth successfully. "I'm finally at ease." Shangguan Linglan slowly put away the letter in his hand. His uneasy heart relaxed a lot and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. "Yes, Madam and the little master are safe. Xing Er nodded his head slightly in response. He turned around and sat down on a chair and said, "But we've been in Northern Pastoral for some time now and nothing has happened. What should we do next?" Xing Er frowned and turned to look at Shangguan Linglong. "It seems that we need to ask Kelly and Theo." Shangguan Linglong heard Xing Er's words and frowned slightly. "Find some time to go to the palace. But the most important thing now is to find Jing Yu's property in Northern Pastoral. Let's meet with Jing Yu's people first. Fortunately, it might be of some help in the next operation." After Shangguan Linglong finished speaking, Xing Er also nodded his head. Chapter 15:15. I think so too. Since that's the case, let's go find Madam's men tomorrow. Xing Er looked at Shangguan Linglong and said, "Okay." After the two discussed what to do next, they left separately. In this Northern Pastoral, Shangguan Linglong and Xing Er were not conspicuous. However, in order to not attract attention, Shanghai Linglong and Xing Er still disguised themselves slightly. What did they disguise themselves as? The morning sun was very warm. Shangguan Linglong wore a simple and elegant robe with her hair tied up in a bun. She walked down the stairs with graceful steps. Downstairs, Xing Er was dressed appropriately and was talking to his subordinates. "Husband." The corners of Shangguan Linglong's mouth curled up slightly as she softly called out, "Wife." Xing Er's body stiffened when he heard Shangguan Linglong call him husband. Although the two of them had been dressed like this for a few days, Xing Er still found it difficult to get used to it. "I'm hungry. Is breakfast ready?" Shangguan Linglong had undergone a huge change. She used to be a mighty female general. After changing her clothes, she instantly became the wife of an official. It took Xing Er a lot of effort to get used to such a gentle and moving appearance. "It's ready. Lan, sit here." Xing Er raised his hand slightly and held Shangguan Linglong's hand as they walked to the prepared seat. Every time he heard Xing Er call her Lan, Shangguan Linglong would have goosebumps. He silently swallowed his saliva, turned around, walked to the other side of the table, and sat down elegantly. In any case, Shangguan Linglong was the daughter of a general and had been to school before. Although she didn't take this class seriously, she still learned what she needed to learn. Acting as the wife of an official wasn't a problem. Xing Er also sat down opposite Shangguan Linglong. "Husband, this food is really not to my taste." After Shangguan Linglong ate a few mouthfuls, she seemed to be very displeased as she said, "Does Northern Shepherd not have any interesting dishes?" "This." Xing Er lowered his head slightly and looked at the food on the table. He frowned and said, "Why do I feel that this food is quite good? I'm not used to it." Shangguan Linglong glared at Xing Er and said with gritted teeth. Xing Er looked at Shangguan Linglong and suddenly thought of something. He suddenly said, "This Northern Pastoral doesn't seem to be very good. Master, madam, do you want to try something new?" When Shangguan Linglong and Xing Er were talking, the person at the next table heard them and turned around to ask, "Nice to meet you, sir. This is my wife. She's used to living in Dongqing, but she doesn't really like the food on this trip." Second Xing turned his body slightly and said to the person at the next table with cupped hands, "So it's a guest from Tokyo." That person also bowed politely and said, "If madam wants to eat such good food, you should go to the bridgehead in the north of the city. There is a very famous restaurant there, and the food in that restaurant is definitely something you have never eaten before." "And the dish that I haven't eaten before, what is it?" When Shangguan Linglong heard this, her eyes immediately revealed a look of surprise and curiosity. She raised her eyebrows slightly and asked, "I have never eaten before, so I don't know what to say." That person helplessly lowered his head and said, "Although that restaurant's dishes are said to be unique in the entire Northern Shepherd region, they are still worth a lot of money. Most people can't even get a cup of tea there." Chapter 15:16. There's such a thing? Then I'll have to go take a look. Shangguan Linglong seemed to be very interested and the corners of his mouth slowly curled up. It seems that master and madam are from a wealthy family. If you want to eat something new, you can go there." The person said with a faint smile. Thank you for your guidance. Xing Er nodded slightly and said, We'll go take a look. Lan, what do you think? Of course. Shengguan Linglan nodded slowly and smiled at the person at the next table. He turned and walked out of the door. He asked the waiter how to get there and followed the path forward. After getting into the carriage, Shengguan Linglan's relatively good image in the crowd suddenly collapsed. He sat down on the chair in the carriage and sighed, I really don't know how those people do it. They always maintain that kind of attitude. Are they really not tired? Xing Yi looked at Shengguan Linglan, who immediately returned to his original appearance once he was out of sight. His eyes were tinged with a faint smile. It was still this kind of Shengguan Linglan that made people feel that he was real. What that person just said is probably Madame's business. Xing Er paused slightly and said, Only Madame's restaurant can be said to be unique. It's just that the restaurant in Tokyo doesn't seem to be expensive. Why is it so expensive in Northern Pastoral? I don't know. Shengguan Linglan responded weakly and said, Won't you know when we get there? Xing Er heard Shengguan Linglan's words and slowly nodded in response. As the carriage finally arrived at the destination, Shengguan Linglan sat up straight and tidied his clothes slightly. Is this okay? Shengguan Linglan was afraid that his movements were too big and messed up his makeup and hairstyle. He sat up straight and looked at Xing Er and asked, No problem. Second interrogation officer swallowed his saliva silently and replied, That's good. Let's go. Shengguan Linglan nodded in satisfaction and smiled at Xing Er. Xing Er silently turned and got off the carriage. He reached out and helped Shengguan Linglan down the carriage. He turned to look at the restaurant in the distance and narrowed his eyes slightly. This restaurant didn't look big, but it was as busy as a marketplace. People came and went and it looked very lively. Shengguan Linglan and Xing Er looked at each other and walked elegantly toward the restaurant. Two guests, please come in. Shengguan Linglan and Xing Er walked to the door and were warmly welcomed in. The person who welcomed them was naturally a well-dressed girl with a sweet smile on her face. It was really like the restaurant in Tokyo. However, what made Shengguan Linglan and Xing Er feel strange was that this restaurant didn't have a name. No wonder the person who introduced them didn't mention the name of this restaurant. Shengguan Linglan was wondering if there was some other reason why they didn't want to tell them. Now it seemed that it wasn't that the person didn't want to tell them, but that this restaurant didn't have a name. Why doesn't this restaurant have a signboard? Shengguan Linglan asked curiously as he looked at the person who welcomed them. Madam, you don't know. The steward said that because the owner hasn't returned, this signboard has to be hung up by the owner himself. The maid didn't seem surprised when she heard Shengguan Linglan's words and replied calmly. Chapter 15-17. So that's how it is. Shengguan Linglan nodded slowly. After a few steps, he was already seated. The decor here wasn't very eye-catching, but it was elegant. Shengguan Linglan looked around. Although it wasn't as amazing as the Qianlai restaurant in the Tokyo Imperial City, it was still very good. Shengguan Linglan sat for a while and saw someone bring the menu over. The names of your dishes are really unique. Shengguan Linglan looked at the familiar names on the menu and the corners of his mouth curved up slightly. I thought I wouldn't be able to eat these dishes in the Northern Pastoral. I didn't expect to be able to eat them. According to Madame's words, could it be that the two of you came from somewhere else? When the maid heard Shengguan Linglan's words, she was slightly taken aback. Then, a smile appeared on her face once again as she asked with a faint smile. Yes, we are from the Tokyo. Shengguan Linglan raised his head slightly and smiled casually at the maid. Tokyo? When Shengguan Linglan finished speaking, the maid's eyes were filled with surprise. She looked at Shengguan Linglan and Xing Er and said, What a coincidence, our manager is also from the Tokyo. Is that so? What a coincidence. Shengguan Linglan's eyes lit up when he heard this. However, it's common for Tokyo people to have businesses in the Northern Pastoral. Shengguan Linglan didn't seem to take it seriously and ordered after saying that. When Shengguan Linglan was ordering, Shengguan Linglan's eyes were looking around. Looking at the people around him, Shengguan Linglan couldn't help but pay attention to himself. He couldn't expose himself in the slightest. "We'll have these. Remember, the flour for the prawn balls must be rolled evenly. It's best to sprinkle some cooking wine on it. If the flavor doesn't enter, it won't be good." Shangguan Linglan handed the menu back to the maid and said, "I like to eat something with a strong flavor." "Yes, madam, please wait a moment." The maid was stunned when she heard Shangguan Linglan's words. She remembered it carefully and nodded politely to Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er before leaving. Shangguan Linglan watched the maid leave before he turned to Xing Er. He lowered his head and said, "Did you see that? Only Jing Yu can make these delicacies, but I'm not sure if this is Jing Yu's territory, so we can only wait and see." Second Xing's eyes shifted slightly as he observed the movements around him. His brows furrowed slightly. Not long after, the dishes were served. Shangguan Linglan looked at the dishes on the table and suddenly realized that one of the dishes was missing. He frowned and turned to the maid. "Why aren't my prawn balls here?" The maid looked at it and compared it with the bill. "Madam, I'm really sorry. I forgot to tell the kitchen. I'm really sorry. How do you do business? You can't even do such a small thing well. I don't think your food is that good." Shangguan Linglan seemed to be very angry, and the noise on this side immediately alarmed the people on the other side of the counter. "I'm sorry. Madam, I'm really sorry. Can I help you add it?" When the maid saw Shangguan Linglan's appearance, her eyes were filled with panic as she spoke repeatedly. Chapter 15:18. "I'll be full by the time you add more," Shangguan Linglan said angrily. "Call your manager over." "Madam." When the waitress heard Shangguan Linglan's words, her face was filled with panic and she apologized profusely. "What's going on?" When Shangguan Linglan turned her head, she saw the middle-aged man standing in front of her. It seemed like this person had some authority in this restaurant. Shangguan Linglan looked over and saw the middle-aged man standing in front of her. It seemed like this person had some authority in this restaurant. "Manager Zhou, I accidentally forgot the dishes that Madam mentioned." The waitress looked at Manager Zhou pitifully and said, "I just forgot. I'm really sorry. I'll add more now, all right." Manor Lord Zhou frowned slightly and waved his hand at the waitress. He turned around and said to Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er, "I'm really sorry. It's our first time doing something and we're being impolite." "You're going to let it go just because you're being impolite?" Shangguan Linglan looked like she was unforgiving. Xing Er looked at Shangguan Linglan and stood up slightly. He said, "Let it go. I don't think this young lady did it on purpose." "What do you mean by, let it go?" Shangguan Linglan's face was filled with anger. She turned to Xing Er and said, "Why are you speaking up for an outsider? Could it be that you've taken a fancy to her because she's young and beautiful?" Shangguan Linglan glared at Xing Er, her face full of anger. "What are you saying?" When Xing Er heard Shangguan Linglan's words, his expression froze. The corner of his mouth twitched violently and he looked at Shangguan Linglan helplessly. "Madam, don't be angry. It's not good for your health if you get angry." Manager Zhou smiled amiably at Shangguan Linglan and said, "What do the two of you think about this? Today, everything you eat and drink in this restaurant will be free of charge. Take it as an apology. In order to show our sincerity, I would like to invite the two of you to have a seat in the private room upstairs. What do the two of you think?" Steward Zhou smiled at Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er and spoke in a negotiating tone. "That's not a good idea, right?" Xing Er frowned slightly when he heard this. His eyes were filled with confusion. He had no idea what Shangguan Linglan was doing all of a sudden. Since you're apologizing so sincerely, this madam will reluctantly not pursue the matter." When Shangguan Linglan heard this, she raised her head slightly arrogantly and said, she really looked like she was high and mighty. Seeing that this was the sarcastic madam, the surrounding people turned their heads away as if they were used to this scene. They watched with their own eyes as Manager Zhou welcomed Shangguan Linglan to the private room on the second floor with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Shangguan Linglan put on airs and followed the person inside. Finally, they turned into the private room. Looking at the familiar decoration in the room, Shangguan Linglan faintly curled the corners of his mouth and slowly sat down. The two of you, please wait here for a moment. Shopkeeper Tang will be here soon. Manager Zhou bowed slightly to Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er. His tone and attitude were instantly different. Shangguan Linglan smiled faintly and agreed. Xing Er stared at this scene with his mouth agape. He couldn't react for a long time. After watching Manager Zhou leave, Xing Er turned his gaze to Shangguan Linglan. His eyes were filled with confusion. Chapter 1519. You blockhead, no wonder you're only a shadow guard. If you go out like this, you won't even know when someone is plotting against you. Shangguan Linglan saw the questioning look in Xing Er's eyes and glared at him with disdain. Xing Er's face darkened when he heard Shangguan Linglan's words, but he didn't say anything. This was because he really didn't know what was going on. He still thought that Shangguan Linglan was angry because of the dish. After all, Shangguan Linglan seemed to like the dish a lot. It was natural for him to be angry because the dish wasn't served. Do you really think that I'm that petty? Shangguan Linglan looked at Xing Er's expression and knew what Xing Er was thinking. He glared fiercely at Xing Er and said. Xing Er silently swallowed his saliva and looked at Shangguan Linglan quietly. What a pig head! Shangguan Linglan was speechless and said, everything just now was just an act. Did you forget? Just now, when I was ordering, I specifically talked about the cooking method of the prawn balls and the points to pay attention to. The purpose was to attract the attention of the people in this restaurant. You should know that this cooking method is not known to anyone, but now, it was easily mentioned by me. The people in the kitchen were naturally attracted. They also found out from the maid that we came from the Tokyo. Do you remember what I said? I said that I didn't expect to be able to eat this dish in the Northern Pastoral. What I meant was that I must have eaten the same dish in the Tokyo. Then the person behind the scenes knew that I came from the Tokyo Imperial City. Shangguan Linglan said indifferently, if they came from the Tokyo Imperial City and know how to make this dish, there's only one possibility. That is, not only did they eat this dish, but they are also familiar with the owner. That's why they know how to make this dish. Jing Yu taught them how to make this dish. Shangguan Linglan explained slowly. Beside him, second interrogation officer was dumbfounded. It had only been a few sentences, how could there be so many tricks involved? However, the owner of this restaurant is really careful. Before he fully confirmed my identity, he purposely left out a dish. Then the dispute you saw just now happened. He invited us into this room alone. Shangguan Linglan sighed as he looked at the exquisite surroundings. I'm very familiar with the decorations of this room. This room? Xing Er heard Shangguan Linglan's words and turned to look at the room with a frown. You might not know, but I do. The design of this room is based on Jing Yu's room in the Tokyo Imperial City. Do you know why Manager Zhou brought us here? Shangguan Linglan turned to Xing Er and asked. But Xing Er turned to Shangguan Linglan and asked. Heavens! Are you really a shadow guard? Shangguan Linglan stared at Xing Er and said, didn't you notice? When you stood up to stop me, I revealed a jade pendant from my sleeve. That jade pendant was given to me by Jing Yu. This time, Xing Er was completely speechless. He really didn't notice. Chapter 1520. My attention is on the people around me, Xing Er said stiffly as he swallowed his saliva. I'm really suspicious. Why would Xiaoqun use you as a secret guard? There are so many things going on, but you didn't notice a single one? Shangguan Linglan looked at Xing Er as if he was looking at an idiot. Just as Shangguan Linglan was about to say something, they heard a knock on the door. The two of them immediately shut their mouths and turned to respond. They were slightly stunned when they saw the person who pushed the door open and walked in. Greetings to Miss Shangguan, I'm Tang Hongyang. The slightly plump middle-aged man quickly glanced at Shangguan Linglan, then quickly walked over and knelt down without saying anything. He greeted her respectfully, causing Shangguan Linglan to smile faintly. I thought it was shopkeeper Tang. So it's you. When Shangguan Linglan saw Tang Hongyang's arrival, the tension in her heart immediately relaxed. She smiled at Tang Hongyang and said, It's me. I didn't expect to see Miss Shangguan. I'm so excited. Tang Hongyang's eyes were filled with excitement as he spoke. Shangguan Linglan also smiled. Let's sit down and talk. Shangguan Linglan raised his hand and said. After the door to the private room closed and Tang Hongyang sat down, the three of them began to talk. Shopkeeper Tang, you don't need us to prove your identity, do you? Shangguan Linglan turned to look at Tang Hongyang and said, This is Xing Er, the secret guard of the 9 emperors. We came to find you this time because we need your help with something important. Yes. Miss Shangguan, please tell me what you need. Tang Hongyang said excitedly, I just don't know. Where is boss now? Jing Yu is currently in Tokyo Yangzhou City. Shangguan Linglan watched as Tang Hongyang asked about Jing Yu's whereabouts. Tang Hongyang's eyes were filled with worry, but his slightly arched eyebrows were full of smiles. He did not expect that after so long, Jing Yu's businesses would still be so loyal. Originally, Jing Yu wanted to come in person this time, but because she is pregnant and is about to give birth, she didn't come. Now, Jing Yu's child has been born. It's a little boy. Shangguan Linglan looked at Tang Hongyang and said with a smile. The boss gave birth to a young master. That's great. When Tang Hongyang heard Shangguan Linglan's words, his eyes were filled with joy as he said, if Shin Yuqing and Lu Man knew about this, they would definitely be very happy. Shangguan Linglan nodded slowly and said, but now is not the time to celebrate. When Tang Hongyang heard Shangguan Linglan's words, he frowned slightly and said seriously, what happened? I believe that you already know who the new Tokyo Empress is, right? Lu Miaoqiu is your boss's good sister, and also my good sister. Originally, Lu Miaoqiu was in the Northern Pastoral, but a few months ago, Lu Miaoqiu disappeared. Do you know about this? Shangguan Linglan frowned deeply and asked Tang Hongyang. The Empress disappeared. When Tang Hongyang heard Shangguan Linglan's words, his eyes widened. He looked at Shangguan Linglan in shock and said, to tell you the truth, I left the Northern Pastoral 3 months ago to purchase goods. Chapter 1521. Of course I know about the relationship between the Empress and boss. When the Empress arrived at the Northern Pastoral, she came to find me with a letter from boss. I originally wanted to protect the Empress, but the Empress didn't want to be protected. She only took some money and bought a small courtyard in the northern suburbs. Tang Hongyang's eyes were filled with shock as he looked at Shangguan Linglan and asked, during the time I was in the Imperial City, I would send people to visit her every now and then. It has always been peaceful. How did she suddenly disappear? Miaoqiu came to find you. Shangguan Linglan's eyes were filled with shock as she looked at Tang Hongyang and asked, where did you say Miaoqiu was staying? Can you bring me there? Of course. Miss Shangguan, please pack up. We'll leave through the back door. Tang Hongyang nodded slightly at Shangguan Linglan and said, it's all my fault. If I didn't have something to do, the Empress would definitely be fine. You can't be blamed for this. Shangguan Linglan sighed and said, Jing Yu is right. It's very likely that this matter is targeting Jing Yu. We must quickly find Miaoqiu's whereabouts. Soon, Jing Yu will come here personally. Boss will come here personally? Tang Hongyang's eyes were tinged with shock. Then, as if he had thought of something, he took a deep breath and said, then let's not delay any longer. Let's set off now. Okay, let's go. Shangguan Linglan nodded in agreement. After leaving the restaurant through the back door, Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er didn't attract anyone's attention. Tang Hongyang really brought Shangguan Linglan to a small courtyard in the northern suburbs. This courtyard was indeed very small, but it was considered a large courtyard for one person to live in. This is the courtyard where the Empress stayed when she first arrived at the Northern Pastoral. Tang Hongyang pointed at the courtyard's large door and said, come, let's go in and take a look. Shangguan Linglan stepped forward and knocked on the door a few times. Sure enough, there was no one inside. He turned his head and gave Xing Er a look. If Xing Er was still unable to resolve this matter, Shangguan Linglan would begin to suspect whether Xing Er was a secret guard or not. If it wasn't for the fact that it was really inconvenient for him to wear it, Shangguan Linglan would have directly knocked the door open. Ahem. Xing Er coughed slightly and calmly stepped forward. He raised his hand and took out the dagger at his waist, and decisively pried open the door. It was probably because no one had lived here for a long time. When Shangguan Linglan and the others stepped in, they immediately felt a sense of desolation. The courtyard was very tidy. It was obvious that Lu Miaoqiu took care of this courtyard very carefully. Looking at the exquisite decoration of the courtyard, Shangguan Linglan felt incomparably warm. Only Lu Miaoqiu would make such a scene. This is Miaoqiu's room? Shangguan Linglan stepped into the master bedroom and looked at the things in front of him. He frowned slightly and said, "Don't come in. If Miaoqiu really left behind any clues, it must be somewhere special. If you come in and break something, it will be troublesome." After saying this, Shangguan Linglan left Xing Er and Tang Hongyang outside the door and stepped into the room alone. Chapter 1522. Tang Hongyang and Xing Er stood at the door and watched Shangguan Linglan's actions. The corners of their mouths twitched slightly. However, when they thought of Shanghai Linglan and Lu Miaoqiu's smirks, they chose to stand there silently. After standing there for a while, Xing Er's gaze landed on the lush bamboo forest. Xing Er walked over and frowned slightly as he looked at the bamboo forest. Shangguan Linglan, who was in the room, also had a conflicted expression on his face. Shanghai Linglan was the worst at guessing people's thoughts. Lu Miaoqiu, on the other hand, was an expert at scheming. Now that Shanghai Linglan stood in the room and looked at the furnishings, he felt that there was nothing different. However, he felt that there was something different about it. Shangguan Linglan frowned and looked at the desk and bookshelf at the side. However, he couldn't find anything. Then, Shanghai Linglan wandered into the inner room and looked at the neatly arranged bedding. Obviously, when Lu Miaoqiu was taken away, this was not the place where she was taken away. Then what was going on? Shangguan Linglan could not think of a reason no matter how she thought about it. "Lingnan, come out and take a look at this." Just as Shanghai Linglan was puzzled, Xing Er's voice sounded from outside. Shanghai Linglan was slightly taken aback when he heard this. Then he turned around and walked out of the room. "What's wrong?" Lu Miaoqiu looked at Xing Er with a hint of confusion in her heart. She turned around and walked toward Xing Er. "Look." Xing Er was dressed in black and stood at the edge of the bamboo forest. He was holding a shovel in his hand. There was still some soil on the shovel. It was obvious that he had just dug here. When he saw Shangguan Linglan walking over, he pouted slightly at Shangguan Linglan. "This is a corpse?" Shangguan Linglan walked over to take a look and immediately saw the corpse of second interrogation officer that was dug out from the soil. Looking at the clothes and bones of the corpse, it was a man's corpse and it was buried very well. Looking at the rotten state of the corpse, it was obvious that it had been buried for a few months. From the way it was buried, the person who buried the corpse wasn't in a hurry. When he buried the corpse, he even took the time to rest outside the bamboo forest. Therefore, the person who buried the corpse was not only calm but also very serious about it. This means that he had a lot of time. Xing Er turned to look at Shangguan Linglan and explained faintly, "Look at the corpse's clothes and the wounds." Xing Er squatted down and pointed at the corpse. "It's obvious that the Empress buried this corpse. However, we don't know the identities of these people. However, we can guess that these people must be here to assassinate the Empress." Xing Er said slowly, "There are several bloody holes in this person's body. It's obvious that the Empress was shocked and didn't kill cleanly. Therefore, she killed him several times in a row, which led to his death." Xing Er stood up and looked at Shangguan Linglan. After killing the person and carefully burying the corpse, the Empress must have noticed something. Therefore, she must have left some clues here. "Did you find anything in the house?" "No." Shangguan Linglan shook his head slightly and said, "If Lu Miaoqiu left any clues, it would be difficult for others to notice. Jingyu wasn't here, so I really couldn't find any obvious clues." Chapter 1523. Look at this command medallion. Second interrogation officer frowned slightly. He raised his hand and dug out a token that looked like a piece of metal from the soil. With a serious expression on his face, he said, "This token looks like it was found beside the corpse, but I feel that this token doesn't belong to the corpse's owner. This command medallion belongs to the poison sect." Shangguan Linglan couldn't be more familiar with this command medallion. Back when the army was poisoned, Shanghai Linglan and Jing Yu had discovered this command medallion. It was the poison sect's identity medallion. Who would have thought that the token would appear here? That's right, this is the poison sect's command medallion. Xing Er nodded slowly as he looked at the command medallion in his hand. You mean to say that this command medallion doesn't belong to the corpse? Then this command medallion, could it be that it's waiting for the person to die? Shangguan Linglan asked with a deep frown. That's exactly what I mean. Xing Er nodded slowly. Although it's just a guess, I think this matter can't be unrelated to the poison sect. As for what's going on, perhaps we'll need to investigate it carefully. Shangguan Linglan also nodded slowly, his eyes grave. Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er wandered around the courtyard once more but still didn't discover anything. In the end, they could only return to the restaurant and return to the private room through the back door. Only then did they go downstairs and calmly exit through the front door. No one noticed this series of movements. It looked as if Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er were just eating in the private room. Far away in Yangzhou, Jing Yu received news from Shangguan Linglan a few days later. Jing Yu was lying in bed, feeding little potato milk. After so many days, Shanghai Linglan had personally watched the wrinkled child slowly grow into something more. Seeing the child like this, Jing Yu found it incomparably fascinating. Her lips hooked into a faint smile as she looked at the child with deep love. So this was what it felt like to be connected as a mother and child. Little potato, do you know how difficult it was for mother to give birth to you? Jing Yu gently patted the little thing in her arms and said, "Grow up quickly. You have to be safe, okay?" The little guy was sleeping soundly in Jing Yu's arms. Jing Yu's words only succeeded in making the little guy turn his head slightly before he went back to sleep. Jing Yu's eyes as she looked at the child's adorable appearance. Jing Yu was playing with little potato when she heard Xiao Chen calling her. When she turned her head, she saw Xiao Chen pushing open the door and walking in. He called out to Jing Yu in a very soft voice, as if he was afraid of scaring the child. "Is little potato asleep?" Xiao Chen turned around and closed the door. He looked at Jing Yu carefully and asked. "Yes, he just fell asleep." Jing Yu nodded slightly at Xiao Chen and replied, "What's wrong?" "Linglan sent news. Take a look," Xiao Chen said as he handed the letter in his hand to Jing Yu. He reached out and took the child from Jing Yu's arms. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen's nervous expression as he held the child and a faint smile appeared in her eyes. She still remembered how nervous Xiao Chen was when he held the child for the first time. She had to teach him a few times before he could hold the child steadily. Now, even though Xiao Chen knew how to hold the child, he still looked very nervous. Her heart was filled with sorrow. Jing Yu and Feng Zhu's relationship had finally come to fruition. While she was in her confinement period, they began to prepare for their marriage. Jing Lang wasn't young anymore, so it was natural for him to get married. Originally, Jing Yu wasn't satisfied with such a hasty marriage. Chapter 1525. However, Jing Lang and Feng Zhu were insistent. They didn't want a grand ceremony and were satisfied with simplicity. Jing Yu couldn't do anything when she saw how insistent the two newlyweds were. Since Feng Zhu didn't care, Jing Yu didn't say anything else. Although everything was simple, Jing Yu still wanted to do it herself. Jing Yu looked at Jing Yu's enthusiasm and could only let her do as she pleased. Jing Yu was naturally very enthusiastic about her brother's marriage. She was playing with Little Potato while discussing with Xiao Chen how to arrange it. Little Potato's large black eyes were looking around, as if he was curious about the outside world. "Hey, Xiao Chen, look. Why is this little guy smiling so happily?" Jing Yu reached out and poked Little Potato's cheeks as she spoke. "Because he's happy to see me." Xiao Chen turned his head and looked over. The corners of his mouth softened as he smiled and spoke. "Shameless. He's clearly happy to see me." Jingyu glared at Xiao Qin and spoke with displeasure. Xiao Qin calmly raised his eyebrows and didn't refute. He looked into Little Potato's eyes and said, "But this little guy's eyes are actually black. It's quite strange that he doesn't have any abnormal pupils." "Yes, my abnormal pupils are still there." As Jingyu spoke, she raised her hands slightly to touch her face. On her face, the pair of golden green eyes were still as lustrous as before, showing no signs of dissipating. Xiao Qin raised his head and looked at Jingyu. He slowly lowered his head and continued to write the gift list. These were all the things that Jing Lang wanted for his wedding. More. When Miss Feng Ju marries, we must make sure that she's grand. Although we can't have a grand ceremony, we must create a sensation in Yangzhou City. Jingyu said seriously as she watched Xiao Qin write. She was still sitting on the side with the baby in her arms and watching Xiao Qin write. Xiao Qin knew what Jingyu was thinking and calmly nodded as he replied. Jing Lang's wedding was held in Yangzhou City's largest splendid pavilion. The golden invitation was sent to almost every household in Yangzhou City. The content of the invitation was enough to make anyone who received it want to kneel down. If it was someone who wasn't mentally strong, they would instantly kneel down. The content of this invitation is also incomparably arrogant. The contents of the invitation introduced Jing Lang's identity very elegantly. At the same time, the names of Xiao Qin and Jingyu were also written. Originally, not many people knew the names of Jingyu and Xiao Qin. However, a few months ago, Jingyu and Xiao Qin destroyed the Zhu residence because of Jing Lang. In Yangzhou City, the names of Jingyu and Xiao Qin were extremely resounding. You don't even know the 9th emperors and the empress of different pupils. What are you doing in Yangzhou City? Originally, when they received the invitation, they were already worried. What was even more frightening was that in less than a day after receiving the invitation, all kinds of news came out in the midst of their busy schedule. They said that if they didn't attend the wedding after receiving the invitation, they wouldn't be giving face to the 9th emperors. How were they supposed to present a gift at the wedding? The other party was the 9th emperors. What kind of gift had they not seen before? If the gift was too light, they would be courting death. The empress of different pupils had said that if the gift was trash, she would really bring the Wanshou army to your house and pay you a visit. Chapter 1526. When everyone heard this news, they felt as if their stomachs were cramping. What the hell was going on? Yangzhou City was boiling because of Jing Lang and Feng Ju's marriage. However, the reason for the boiling wasn't because of Jing Lang and Feng Ju, but because of the gifts. The 9th emperors and the imperial concubine had personally sent out invitations. Even if their legs were broken, they still had to go. No matter what, they could not go. Therefore, after a short moment of struggle, the people in Yangzhou City went completely crazy. Why was this? Of course, it was because they wanted to accumulate wealth everywhere. They wanted to look for treasures everywhere. The gifts couldn't be light. Maybe the gifts they sent would enter the eyes of the 9th emperors and the imperial concubine. That would be incredible. They would be able to establish a good relationship with them. If someone jumped out now and said that the 9th emperors were rebellious ministers and Jingyu was an evildoer with different pupils, they would be drowned by everyone's spittle. At this time, they still dared to speak ill of the 9th emperors and the 9th imperial concubine. They were simply impatient. At that time, the Holy Family was the fiercest. Now that the entire family had been destroyed, who would dare to speak ill of them? Wasn't that courting death? The 4 countries were helpless against the 9th emperors and the 9th imperial concubine. If a small Yangzhou city offended the 9th emperors and the 9th imperial concubine, it might be trampled to death by thousands of beasts in the next second. If it was because of one person's words that led to a disaster in Yangzhou City, then these people would swallow the person who said it alive. People were like this. At that time, they had cursed so fiercely. Now that they knew how powerful Jingyu and Xiao Qin were, they didn't dare to act rashly. They even wanted to establish a good relationship with them. People had to be strong enough to make people fear them. Only then could they have a foothold in this world. Jingyu had a huge change in her understanding of this. Was this the way of survival? Jing Lang's wedding was really lively. When Jing Lang heard the news, his face turned green with regret. When he told Jing Yu to keep everything simple, he trusted Jing Yu very much. But who would have thought that in the blink of an eye, everyone in Yangzhou City would know about it, and the whole city would be in a storm. What was even more intolerable to Jing Lang was that Jing Yu had drawn the portraits of Jing Lang and Feng Ju on the invitation. This was so gorgeous that no matter where Jing Lang and Feng Ju went, strangers would come forward to congratulate them. Jing Lang was very curious about one or two people. But when there were countless people, Jing Lang couldn't help but feel annoyed. He was curious about what was going on. Why were there so many people who he didn't know coming to congratulate him? These people were here to give their blessings. You can't just ignore them, right? If they congratulated him, he naturally had to respond. However, there were too many people. In the end, Jing Lang was forced to the point where he didn't even dare to step out of the door. Then he went to look for Jing Yu. After learning the reason from Jing Yu, he was so shocked that he almost bit his tongue off. What did you say? You did all of this? Jing Lang almost spat out the tea in his mouth. He looked at Jing Yu with a stunned face and asked, Yes, I did all of this. Jing Yu nodded calmly and said, Didn't Big Brother say to keep everything simple? So I only sent the invitation to the people in Yangzhou City, I didn't send it to the neighboring county. Chapter 1527. Jing Yu answered seriously, almost causing Jing Lang to fall off his chair. What's wrong? Do you want to inform the neighboring counties? Jing Yu looked at Jing Lang and said, Then I'll get someone to do it now. Wait. Jing Lang quickly said, That's not what I meant. I wanted to say, there's no need to go through so much trouble. Sigh. Jing Lang sighed deeply. He didn't know what to say. He held his breath, but he couldn't go up or down. He swallowed his saliva and said, Since the invitations have been sent out, then let's leave it at that. Don't send out any more invitations. Jing Lang sighed deeply and said to Jing Yu. Jing Yu looked at Jing Lang's appearance and silently swallowed her saliva. She didn't know what Jing Lang was doing. Just as she was about to ask, she heard cries coming from the room. She immediately stood up and said, Little Potato is awake. Big Brother, I will go and take a look. Go, I won't disturb you. I'll go back first. Jing Lang looked at Jing Yu and nodded slowly. Jing Lang left with a heart full of resentment. However, he thought about it again. Jing Yu did all this for him. So in Jing Yu's eyes, the simplicity of the wedding was limited to the entire Yangzhou City? If Jing Lang were to hold a big event, that would be the case. Would Jing Yu inform the entire Yangzhou City? Or even the entire world? Oh my God, Jing Lang's body shook violently. Fortunately, he said to simplify the wedding. Or else, Jing Lang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His sister was really different from the rest. This wedding was prepared for half a month and finally started. In Yangzhou City, everyone was looking forward to it. Jing Yu had successfully completed her confinement and was able to go out during Jing Lang's wedding. Why did I gain so much weight? Jing Yu was about to cry. The body that wouldn't gain weight no matter how much she ate was now completely deformed. The body that could wear anything was gone. Jing Yu was about to explode early in the morning. Woo-woo, what should I do? Jing Yu tried for a long time but couldn't squeeze herself into the beautiful clothes. She wanted to cry but had no tears. She looked at Xiao Chen and said, It's all your fault. You made me eat this and that every day. Look how fat I am now. Jing Yu glared at Xiao Chen angrily. Xiao Chen buckled his belt and turned to look at Jing Yu's body. He couldn't see where she had gained weight. Other than the part that was supposed to be big became bigger, there didn't seem to be any other changes. Xiao Chen calmly walked forward and put his arm around Jing Yu's waist. He smiled and said, I like you better like this. Go away. Jing Yu angrily pushed Xiao Chen away and said, The clothes I used to wear are too small. Today is Big Brother's wedding day. What do you want me to wear? Xiao Chen looked at the clothes that Jing Yu had thrown to the side. He raised his eyebrows and said, Don't worry. I'll get someone to bring the clothes over. Chapter 1528. Jingyu replied with a gloomy face. Isn't this good? It feels even better to the touch. Xiaochen looked at Jingyu's unhappy face and his lips curled into a faint smile. The hand that was holding Jingyu's waist slowly moved upwards. Jingyu exclaimed. The tips of her ears instantly turned red. She raised her hand to slap Xiaochen's hand away and said, "Hurry and help me find clothes." Xiaochen tilted his head slightly and kissed Jingyu's cheek. Then he turned around and left. Jingyu looked at Xiaochen's flirtatious behavior and a faint blush appeared on her cheeks. She slowly walked over and sat by the bronze mirror. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her small, pointy face looked much rounder now. Her pair of golden-green eyes were incomparably captivating. It was as if they were exuding a seductive glow. Her swollen chest, probably because she had just given birth, had grown a lot. At a glance, it was exceptionally seductive. There was an even more moving feeling. Jingyu looked at herself in the mirror and smiled. She actually felt that she was shockingly beautiful. However, oh my God, when did my stomach get so fat? Jingyu pinched the excess fat on her stomach. She was about to explode. You should grow where you should grow meat, but why are you growing where you shouldn't grow meat? Jingyu really wanted to cut it off. My poor little waist, how did it become a bucket waist? Jingyu pinched the fat on her stomach with hidden bitterness. When Xiaochen came back, Jingyu had finally put on her new clothes. Originally, Jingyu was worried that the clothes that Xiaochen brought back would not fit her waist. However, it was obvious that Jingyu worried too much. In Jingyu's opinion, her belly had grown a lot, but it actually didn't grow a lot. How could she not fit into the clothes? Jingyu tied her hair up in a very dignified bun. The clothes that Xiaochen brought over were slightly brighter. In the past, Jingyu's clothes were slightly dull and plain. When she suddenly put on such bright clothes, it really made people's eyes light up. Their eyes were filled with amazement. When Jingyu finished changing and walked out, Xiaochen was sitting outside and waiting. When he turned his head and saw Jingyu come out, he was instantly stunned. Then, under Jingyu's gaze, Xiaochen frowned deeply. What's wrong? I don't look good? Jingyu saw Xiaochen's frown and asked. Xiaochen was silent for a moment, then he stood up and said, "Change." When Jingyu heard Xiaochen's words, she immediately frowned and said, "What's wrong? You chose this for me. I think it's not bad. Also, what do you want me to change into? I only have this set of clothes." When Xiaochen heard Jingyu's words, he frowned deeply. He stared at Jingyu for a long time, as if he was very conflicted. Is it that ugly? Jingyu looked at Xiaochen's expression and frowned unhappily. No. Xiaochen sighed deeply and said, "Let's go." Jingyu blinked. She didn't know what was wrong with Xiaochen. However, when she thought that the wedding was about to start, Jingyu didn't think too much about it. After coaxing little potato to sleep, she let the nanny take care of him. Chapter 1529. As for himself, he went to Splendid Pavilion with Xiaochen. Fengju's parents had died early, and Jinglang only had Jingyu as his younger sister. Naturally, Jingyu and Xiaochen sat in the main hall. When Jinglang rode the horse to welcome the bride, he originally planned to go directly to the Splendid Pavilion. However, the manservant and sedan bearer who led the horse took the bride and groom in a big circle around Yangzhou City. Jinglang didn't need to think to know that this must be Jingyu's order. Since it was arranged, Jinglang couldn't go alone. He could only ride his horse and wear a decent smile. After circling around Yangzhou City, he finally arrived at the entrance of Splendid Pavilion. While Jinglang was receiving his bride, the guests began to arrive in an endless stream. Moreover, each of them brought a generous gift. Xiaochen and Jingyu sat alone in the main hall, watching these people present their gifts. The people who received the gifts were Xing Yi and Qinggu. The two of them were so excited that they were about to explode. Qinggu looked at the various rare treasures that those people had sent up. If there were any medicinal herbs that were sent up, Qinggu simply couldn't wait to snatch them away. He was thinking about receiving gifts. While giving out red packets, he also recorded the names of the people and their powers. After those people finished giving their gifts, they would look at Jingyu and Xiao Chen's expressions. When they saw Xiao Chen's faint smile, they knew that they had given the right gift. But when they saw Xiao Chen's expressionless face, they suddenly felt a little nervous. It seemed that they didn't give the right gift. But when they saw Xiao Chen's cold face, they had to be careful. If Xiao Chen and Jingyu both had cold faces, they would advise them to quickly find an excuse to leave. Go back and quickly send away the people who should be sent away. Take your wife and children and go far away. This gift-giving ceremony lasted for an hour. Some people were happy, some people were sad. No one was calm. Finally, the gifts were almost all received. The groom and the bride finally arrived. The sound of gongs and drums resounded. This was probably the most sensational day in Yangzhou City. After the bride and groom bowed to heaven and earth, it was time for the celebration banquet. Jingyu and Xiao Chen's rallying power was amazing. Almost all the people in Yangzhou City were gathered together. These famous people sat closest to Jingyu and Xiao Chen, and these small people lined up at the back. No one had any objections to this arrangement. If you want to sit in front, that's fine. Your gift money. After this event, Jingyu and Xiao Chen's reputation became even higher. Even Jing Lang and Feng Zhu's reputation became higher. Why was this? This was the first time they had seen such a method of receiving gifts during a wedding. As the main characters of this event, how could their reputation not be high? Many years later, when Jing Lang thought of this matter, he would still sigh deeply. He really didn't know whether to laugh or cry about this. Jingyu felt that she hadn't seen such a lively, prosperous, and harmonious scene for many years. Seeing her elder brother smiling so happily, it finally settled a burden in Jingyu's heart. The night was hazy. This wedding night naturally couldn't be disturbed. These guests were discerning. Seeing that they had eaten and drank enough, they decisively left. Jingyu and Xiao Chen had been busy for the whole day and returned to their rooms. Chapter 1530. Eat slowly, no one is going to steal your food, Xiao Chen said indifferently. Xiao Chen. Jingyu swallowed the food in her mouth and said, now that Big Brother's wedding is over and there's nothing left in Yangzhou, we should go to the northern pastoral. As long as Miaoqiu's matter isn't resolved, I won't be able to rest easy. Yes, it's time to move. Xiao Chen nodded slightly and said, this time, we won't be bringing such a large army, just a small group of people will be enough. If so many people go, Heli and Theo will be nervous. Hi, okay. Jingyu's eyes were tinged with a faint smile when she heard Jingyu's words and nodded in agreement. I'll go prepare, we'll set off in 3 days, Xiao Chen said to Jingyu and watched as Jingyu finished eating and went to prepare. At this time, Xing Yi also received news that Shanghai Linglan and Xing Er had finished investigating everything in the imperial city and seemed to have found some clues. Someone said that Lu Miaoqiu was seen leaving the city, so Xing Er and Shanghai Linglan were currently investigating outside the city. They should be able to find out where Lu Miaoqiu went before Jingyu arrived. The person who took Lu Miaoqiu away was too cunning. Not only did they use the poison sect as a cover, but they also made Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er investigate the poison sect. However, halfway through their investigation, they discovered that this matter had nothing to do with the poison sect. Who was this person who knew Jingyu so well? Jingyu bid farewell to Jing Lang, Feng Zhu, and the others, then took the children and Qinggu and the others to the northern pastoral. Su Yu, Feng Maching, and the others also went home after attending Jing Lang's wedding. Su Yu's Constellation Palace matters needed to be dealt with properly. However, Feng Maching, Feng Ling, and Jingyu were in a dilemma. It was said that on the night of Feng Zhu's wedding, Feng Ling drank till she was dead drunk and left the next morning after leaving behind a letter. Jingyu was very puzzled about this, and only after asking Xiao Chen did she understand the cause and effect of this matter. So Feng Ling actually fell in love with Feng Zhu? No wonder Jingyu felt that the Feng Ling she saw this time was different from the Feng Ling she had seen before. Now, it seemed that he understood. However, it was not easy for Feng Ling to be able to watch the girl he liked get married. Feng Ling left, but Feng Yu, the little girl, stayed behind. But the reason was very simple. Xiao Bai. I'm telling you. I'm not done with you. From today onwards, I'll go wherever you go. I'll definitely defeat you. Feng Yu was completely at odds with Xiao Bai. Her angry appearance all day long made Jing Yu laugh endlessly. He really didn't understand. How did this little girl get together with Xiao Bai? What made Jing Yu even more speechless was why Xiao Bai, who was incomparably obedient and sensible to Jing Yu, was always so mischievous and thought of ways to mess with Feng Yu. He also always pretended to be cold, watching Feng Yu embarrass herself and jump around. These people who should leave had all left, but Jing Lang and Feng Ju stayed behind in Yangzhou City. Originally, Jing Lang wanted to leave with Jing Yu, but how could Jing Yu agree? It was not easy for this big brother to settle down, and it was a good time to enjoy life. They had just gotten married, so Jing Yu could handle these matters. Naturally, there was no need to trouble Jing Lang. After 3 days of preparation, they officially bid farewell to their big brother and sister-in-law. Chapter 1531. She set foot on the road to the northern pastoral. As for little Potato, she naturally brought him with her. It was better to take care of the child herself. The journey to the northern pastoral wasn't difficult at all. It seemed like they were playing and walking at the same time. In the past, they had to hide. Now, Jing Yu wanted to walk openly on the road. Who would dare to say anything to Jing Yu? The scenery here is really good. Let's rest here. Jing Yu held little Potato and turned her head to look at the scenery outside. She turned her head and said to Xiao Chen, "Okay." Xiao Chen calmly replied and said, "You must be tired carrying the child along the way. Come down for a walk and rest." Xiao Chen immediately announced the stop of the carriage. The carriage stopped under the shade of a tree. Looking at the green grass and mountains, she felt incomparably happy. "Madam, I don't want to sit in the same carriage as him." Jing Yu stepped out of the carriage. She saw Feng Yu rush back anxiously. She looked at Jing Yu with an aggrieved expression. "Why?" Jing Yu turned her head and looked at Feng Yu. She then turned her head to look at Xiao Bai, who was calmly walking over, and asked, "Xiao Bai, did you bully little sister Feng Yu again?" Xiao Bai looked at Jing Yu seriously and said, "She doesn't like me." "Is that so?" Jing Yu blinked her eyes and looked at Feng Yu again. "Anyway, I don't want to sit in the same carriage as him." Feng Yu angrily glared at Xiao Bai and said, "Then you can walk." Xiao Bai curled his lips in disdain and said, "It's not like I begged you to come with me." Xiao Bai's words were so serious that it made Feng Yu, who was on the side, speechless. "I know." Feng Yu suddenly thought of something and jumped up in fear. She glared at Xiao Bai and said, "You must be using this method to make me leave, right? Then you can tell others that I lost." "Xiao Bai, let me tell you. I won't be fooled by you." Feng Yu put her hands on her hips and glared fiercely at Xiao Bai. "Xiao Bai, just you wait. I will never admit defeat so easily." "Oh." Xiao Bai responded expressionlessly when he heard Feng Yu's words. He looked up at Jing Yu and Xiao Chen with a bright smile and said, "Father, Mother, I'm going to play." After he finished speaking, he didn't care about Feng Yu's expression. He turned around and left. Feng Yu stared dumbfounded at Xiao Bai's actions. Every time she saw Xiao Bai smile so happily in front of Jing Yu and Xiao Chen, he would ignore her. Feng Yu had an inexplicable feeling of anger. She felt that she was being looked down upon. "Stop right there. Don't even think about shaking me off." Feng Yu looked at Xiao Bai's distant figure and hurriedly chased after him. Ugh. Jing Yu looked at this scene with the child in her arms and frowned slightly. What was going on with these two children? Don't worry about them. Xiao Chen looked away expressionlessly and helped Jing Yu to a rock on the side. He said, "Let's go sit over there." Jing Yu nodded slightly and walked over. She looked at the two people playing by the stream and tilted her head slightly to look at Xiao Chen. She said, "What's going on with Feng Yu and Xiao Bai? Why does it seem like they're going to fight no matter what they do?" Chapter 1532. Children are all like that. Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and said carelessly, "When I was young, I was like that too." "Ha, that's true." Jing Yu's eyes were tinged with a faint smile when she heard this. She turned her head to look at Xiao Bai and Feng Yu in the distance, seemingly talking. By the side of the stream, there were two children of similar ages. One was dressed in black, while the other was dressed in pink. They were treading on the water and playing. Just a moment ago, they looked as if they were mortal enemies. But now, they were smiling so brightly. Look at this stone, it's so beautiful. Feng Yu found a very exquisite stone in the river. She raised her hand and picked it up, then exclaimed to Xiao Bai in surprise. It's obvious that you haven't seen the world. Xiao Bai turned his head and said, when I went to the bottom of the sea before, I saw even more beautiful stones. There were all kinds of colors and shapes. Really? Feng Yu's eyes lit up when she heard this. She stared at Xiao Bai and asked, in the sea? You've been to the sea? What's the sea like? What's there? Do you want to know? Xiao Bai looked at Feng Yu's bright eyes and asked calmly with a smile. Yes. Feng Yu looked at Xiao Bai with a face full of curiosity. Call me big brother and I'll tell you, Xiao Bai said to Feng Yu with a smile. Feng Yu's expression changed when she heard this. She gritted her teeth and said to Xiao Bai, fine, I won't tell you. I suddenly don't want to know. You want me to call you big brother? Dream on. Oh, you have quite a temper. Xiao Bai found a stone by the river and sat down. He said indifferently, the bottom of the sea is very big. It's like a world. That world is very beautiful, but it's also very dangerous, Xiao Bai's indifferent voice sounded. Feng Yu was slightly stunned and looked at Xiao Bai. The young man who was looking up at the sky seemed to be much quieter at this moment. It was as if no one dared to disturb him at this moment. Feng Yu didn't understand. She clearly didn't call Xiao Bai big brother, so why did Xiao Bai say it to her? However, Feng Yu knew that many years later, when she recalled that young man in black, her heart would beat faster. He also said that he would take her to see it if there was a chance. But for some reason, this sentence became a promise that could not be fulfilled. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen once again embarked on a journey and entered the northern pastoral territory. They headed toward the northern pastoral imperial city to meet up with Shengguan Linglan and Xing Er. The journey was very smooth, but a few days after they entered the northern pastoral, something happened. The carriage traveled slowly on the road. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen were sitting in the carriage and playing with Little Potato when they suddenly heard the neighing of a horse. The carriage shook violently and stopped. The smiles on Jing Yu and Xiao Chen's faces immediately disappeared. What's going on? Jing Yu held Little Potato in her arms with a serious expression. I'll go take a look. You stay here. Xiao Chen said to Jing Yu and turned to leave the carriage. Jing Yu nodded slightly and looked at Little Potato in her arms. She pursed her lips slightly. Chapter 1533. Even if Jing Yu encountered such a situation, she wouldn't panic much. However, it was different now. She was carrying their child in her arms. She absolutely couldn't let anything happen to the child. Jing Yu frowned tightly and listened attentively to the movements outside. In this dense forest, Jing Yu and Xiao Chen's group were surrounded by a group of black-clothed men. Looking at the posture of these black-clothed men, it was obvious that they were assassins hired by someone. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen really had too many enemies. Xiao Chen tried to ask these black-clothed men, but he didn't get any response. They directly started killing. The situation in front of him didn't look too good. Jing Yu had been hiding in the carriage all this time and hadn't shown herself. Fortunately, Xiao Chen discovered that these assassins didn't seem to be very strong after fighting for a while. Could it be that Xiao Chen and Jing Yu were really going into battle lightly? Were these people just decorations? If that was the case, then it was a big mistake. Whether it was the driver or the guards, they were all carefully selected by Xiao Chen. How could they be ordinary people? With a sword in hand, they could kill in all directions. As for Xiao Bai and Feng Yu in this group, one was the overlord of the sea and the other was a little witch. How could they be easily bullied? Therefore, these assassins had simply kicked an iron plate. Coming to assassinate Jing Yu and Xiao Chen was equivalent to sending themselves to death. On this side, Xiao Chen led a group of people to fight with the assassins. On the other side of the forest, there was a group of people walking on another road. There were some goods in the carriages and it seemed like they were escorting an escort team. While they were traveling, Xiangxi heard the movement over there and immediately stopped. He frowned when he heard the sound. "Big brother, there's the sound of fighting." A burly man dressed in cotton clothes stepped forward and turned his head to say, "Second brother, fourth brother, the two of you go and see what's going on." The person who was addressed as Big Brother turned his head to look at the commotion in the forest and said, "Big escort leader, we are just escorts. Let's not interfere in other people's business." A man beside the escort leader frowned and said. The escort leader frowned as well when he heard this. "Since we've come across them, how can we just leave them be? If it wasn't for boss's help back then, we wouldn't even know if we were dead or alive." The escort leader furrowed his brows and replied, "Second brother, fourth brother, go take a look." The person in front of him was none other than Xiaowenshi, one of the 6 brothers that Jingyu had taken in at the Jade Pass. Later on, they had gone missing after setting up an escort agency. Okay. The people who responded were none other than second brothers Su Xingting and fourth brother Mao Yi. When Su Xingting and Mao Yi arrived at the battlefield, they saw countless men in black attacking a carriage. They were quite far away and couldn't see who it was. Just as the two of them were hesitating whether to help or not, they suddenly heard the crisp cry of a baby. The two of them immediately widened their eyes. These beasts! They actually want to lay their hands on a child. Mao Yi couldn't take it anymore and said to Su Xingting, "Second brother, go tell big brother. I'll go help them first." Okay. Su Xingting nodded and went without a second thought. Mao Yi cursed fiercely and waved his large sword as he charged in. Chapter 1534. Just as Xiao Chen and the others were having a good time killing, they suddenly heard a shout. Then, they saw a burly man rushing in. His aura was so imposing that even 10,000 men couldn't get through. Xiao Chen was slightly taken aback. He probably didn't expect to meet someone in a place like this. After meeting someone, he actually killed his way in. Everyone was immediately stunned. "Let me give you a hand." The burly man roared and started fighting. Before Xiao Chen could react, another shout was heard. More people rushed in from the dense forest. They were so fast that they rushed towards Xiao Chen. Each of them was shouting for help. Xiao Chen was stunned when he saw this scene. With so many people helping, of course, it was solved in an instant. It was as easy as blowing off dust to get rid of these people. The sudden appearance of this group of people was obviously a martial artist. They were all people who licked blood from the edge of the blade. They were not lenient when it came to killing people. In just a few moves, this group of black-clothed people was beaten to death and ran away. "Ha! How satisfying!" The person who rushed in first said with a laugh. Seeing that the black-clothed people were either dead or running away, Xiao Chen finally looked at the few people who appeared. When he looked, he immediately saw a few familiar faces. He frowned slightly. "You guys?" Xiao Chen said softly. The few people who appeared also turned their eyes to Xiao Chen. "Ninth Emperors?" Xiaowenshi and the others turned their heads to look, but when they saw Xiao Chen standing beside the carriage, their eyes were filled with astonishment as they cried out involuntarily. "Xiao Chen, what are you doing?" Xiaowenshi and the others turned their heads to look, only to see Xiao Chen standing beside the carriage. "Ninth Emperors? It's really the Ninth Emperors." Mao Yi also saw Xiao Chen and suddenly exclaimed, "So it's the few heroes." Xiao Chen looked at these people and the corners of his mouth slowly curled up. When Jingyu saved these people and took them in for her own use, Xiao Chen naturally knew. "Xiao Chen? Are you okay?" Jingyu, who was sitting in the carriage, heard that the noise outside had almost disappeared. She coaxed the child to stop crying and then raised her voice to ask. Listening to the movement outside, it seemed that there were helpers. If the Ninth Emperors is here, then the people in the carriage. The third brother, Du Peng, widened his eyes slightly. Just as he said this, he heard a familiar voice from the carriage. "It's okay, you heir, you can come out." Hearing Jingyu's words, Xiao Chen turned to lift the curtain of the carriage and said, Perhaps there are a few people you'd like to meet. Poor they. When Jingyu heard Xiao Chen's words, a faint doubt appeared in her eyes. She bent down and got out of the carriage. When she turned her head, her eyes instantly widened and her face was filled with astonishment. Why are my brothers here? Big brother Xiao, third brother Du, you guys? Jingyu's eyes were filled with astonishment. She looked at the 6 people in front of her with a strong sense of astonishment. Boss. It's really boss. The moment Xiao Wenshi and the others saw Jingyu get out of the carriage, their eyes instantly turned red. Looking at Jingyu's familiar face and hearing her familiar voice, they suddenly became excited. They took a step forward and shouted loudly, "Boss, it's really you? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.